Hello everybody, here we are today talking about the St. Louis Blues and how they're looking better with Jim Montgomery as their head coach, and just seeing if this will actually lead into something. So before we get started with that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. Being said, let's get on into it. So St. Louis was the second team to fire their head coach in the league this year, and then ended up hiring the first fired head coach, it being Montgomery from the Boston Bruins after he got canned, and he took over for a team that was 9-12-1 and sat 26th in the league for points percentage. And since he's taken over, they've been able to go out there in 6 games, capture points in 5 of those 6 games, and go 4-1-1 in that stretch with some notable wins against teams like the New Jersey Devils, the New York Rangers, and the Winnipeg Jets. Now I know we're probably looking at New York primarily at that group and saying, oh, well, they're kind of in a rut. And then Winnipeg honestly has been a little bit of a rut as well too since a historic start to the year. But at the end of the day, these are wins against teams that are in the playoff picture for sure, and they're good. I mean, look at the fact that they just shut out the Devils 3-0. That's got to count for something, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about making it to the finish line and compiling points, which is what they really needed Jim to do when he jumped into this role, at least from what we've seen early on. And they've been able to go out there and do that. They've done it in a variety of ways too, whether it is getting out to big leads in the first period, getting to have a little bit of a runaway in the third to be able to claim a victory there. There are just good signs kind of in front of you. And it's not just related to, oh, we were able to have a big first period. There are some things like individual stories. Looking at a guy like Dylan Holloway, obviously somebody that they got over from Edmonton. He had, I believe, 26 points in his first 111 games played in the NHL. And over his past 6 games, he's got 9 points in that span and is playing about 16 and a half minutes. Looking like a good young player for them, possibly for the future. He's just 23 years old and is a guy that you're saying, man, if he can have this much success early on with Jim, what could it be for a full season, a full off season to kind of grow and develop? And it's good knowing too that he's been part of kind of a third line for St. Louis that has maybe not got as many goals as they'd like, but certainly is getting some of those chances, which is one of the many positives we've seen here in Montgomery's short time with St. Louis. And you can look at some other things too, like the fact this team has played a relatively good schedule, at least a schedule that has been, a little harder than you probably would have liked, having a new coach come into the ranks. And they've come out of this relatively unfazed, and they are a team that still gets their work cut out for them in the moment. But if they make it a little bit longer, I looked ahead in their schedule, they have a stretch of 12 games where they play 11 teams, or at least 11 games against some of these teams that probably won't be in the playoff picture. We're talking about teams like Chicago, Nashville, Detroit, Buffalo, Columbus, Anaheim, just to name a few. There are a lot of similarities with these sides. You're seeing a team in Chicago, their head coach got fired recently. Kind of wonder if there'll be an opening for Nashville's head coaching spot if things can kind of continue to spiral there. Detroit, you'd have to imagine their head coach might be going. But the similarities with a lot of these teams are that they just aren't ready to compete right now. I know Columbus and Anaheim might have better years than expected, but it's just not necessarily a total threat when you look at a 12-game span. The best team they play in that group is the Minnesota Wild, certainly the playoff team, the only one out of that bunch. But if you are able to kind of have a good run there, along with what we've seen, through this stretch, they're going to be setting themselves up very, very nicely for a playoff spot. And the good news is they're still within reach right now of a playoff position, and that is big because all you really need is to get hot for a long period and just, kind of build off that. And I know that it sounds like a lot to do, but you'll see teams, that go out there on these really long runs. Columbus, when they went on that 16-game win streak, Nashville, when they went on that point streak last year. It's not completely unfounded to imagine that to be a possibility here. Do I think the Blues end up making it to playoffs? I'm going to say no, I don't think they will, primarily because it's going to be too hard to probably break into the top 3 of the division. Dallas is going to make it. I'm just kind of banking on that. Minnesota's got off to a fantastic start. Kirill Kaprizov has more 3+ point nights than 0 point nights in the season. Winnipeg had a great start to the year. They probably will be a playoff team yet again. So with there already being a bigger gap in trying to play catch-up, I don't see that being the case. And then when you look at the teams that are above them in the wild card, I don't see them missing out. Edmonton and, of course, Colorado are in those spots right now too. But even if things get shuffled around, LA's on a 5-game win streak. Vancouver's getting Thatcher Demko back. They've been really good on the road. Vegas is on their way to, of course, probably capturing another Pacific Division title. So it's going to be hard, obviously, because they have a lot of teams in front of them, and it's just one of those deals where while they've been doing well, there's still some things that you're kind of worried about. They are 3 for 18 on the power play for this stretch. They've killed off 13 of 15 penalties, which is good, but they've had games where they've allowed a decent amount of shots. Jordan Binnington has had some games where things have gone well for him, but he's also had some games where, again, he's consistently allowed 3 or 4 goals in those. And I just feel like if the power play struggles, if the PK kind of wavers, Jordan Binnington, isn't the guy that we saw on their way to the Stanley Cup final where they won it. You have reason to be concerned here a little bit. And then, of course, too, you just can't ride momentum forever. Not saying that this is all momentum, but I just can't say that everything's going to work out for them. They've been scoring over 4 goals consistently, and that is great. But over the course of a full season, you have to imagine things will probably drop off a little bit, and you again have to remind yourself they could be 10 points back of a team. They need those teams to either side, or they have to capture an insane amount of points on that run in order to keep things kind of going. So that being said, we're going to be talking about, is this actually leading into something? In my eyes, this very well could be, even though we're very early into all this. It's kind of hard to say because it's just 6 games, but the Blues looked like they're going to be a team that was going to finish somewhere in the mid to low 70s for points with what we saw with Drew Bannister. And with Montgomery, we're talking about, man, could they actually go on a run to get into the postseason? So in the short term, that's a benefit for you, although maybe you would have wanted a good draft pick. But, again, seeing this, you are looking at this kind of in a long-term vision. St. Louis signed him to a 5-year deal, and Montgomery is going to be around for a while. He's experienced winning with 2 other teams and talents in Boston, as I'm kind of stumbling along the way here. But you see a Blues organization that kind of feels revitalized just in a couple spans of weeks, and you'd have to think that the Blues, if the winning kind of continues, are going to be very excited to see what happens here, even if they are ultimately the last team out of the playoff picture. So anyway, what are your thoughts on Jim Montgomery and the St. Louis Blues? Do you think something is brewing here in Missouri? Do you feel like the organization is set up well for the next, 5 years? And do you think they'll get back to the playoffs for the first time since 2022? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go love all your right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.